Hello and welcome to DDOCast episode 566 or 556, recorded live on Sunday for April 28th. I'm awake. I'm your host Patrick. I'll be doing the news again by myself. There's really not a lot of news this week, so should be pretty short. We'll get to our main topic later. Our screenshot of the week: Everina and her new companion prepare to tackle Sharn in style. And the 412th screenshot of the week. Thanks, Everina, for sending in this week's screenshot. Nice picture of the Warforged Peacock. We like to talk about Dungeons & Dragons online nearly every weekend. You can watch us through Twitch, YouTube, the DDO forums, iTunes, or from our website at DDOCast.com. DDOCast is hosted by Cyber Ears, the awesome podcast hosting network, and shows are usually available within a few days of recording. The next show will be next weekend sometime, and I'll talk more about that later. You can stay updated by following us on our social media pages or our website, DDOCast.com, with our calendar. On the podcast this week, like I said, there's almost no game news to speak of, but we'll cover that and look at some of the community news and stuff. And then we also have later part 2 of our discussion about Reaper status and where that is, and kind of an update on where we think that is. We had a lot of fun recording that last weekend, so I hope you enjoy the second part of it. For now, let's talk about game news. Like I said, there's not a whole lot. Cordovan posted an update. They're updating us on the release date for Masterminds of Sharn. In recent days, as we've neared our original April 30th date, that would be this week, we've been looking at several things we want to do yet, based in part on your feedback from Alemania. So we have decided to take a bit more time for final bug fixing and polish work. The new release date for Masterminds of Sharn expansion is now May 14th. So they're pushing it back 2 weeks. A bit of a bummer, but I think the consensus pretty much is we'd rather have it better the first time and wait 2 weeks than have it not so great the first time and then have a bunch of problems with it. So they also had Lemania, a third preview for Lemania, or will have a third preview Mana. That will be this week. There is a planned dev event on Wednesday, May 1st from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. Lemania will be open Tuesday, April 30th until sometime the evening of Thursday, May 2nd. So if you want to check out where Update 42 and Masterminds of Sharn is, this would be your opportunity. There is really the big news out of this is there's going to be another Explorer dungeon. So we'll have 9 Sharn story dungeons, 8 Cogs Explorer dungeons, for a total of 17 dungeons plus 2 raids, only one of which is going to be on Lemania, the one that's releasing the same time, Update 42. If they follow their same kind of programming or pattern from when they did Ravenloft, what'll happen is we'll get there'll be a Lemania preview of the new raid, kind of in conjunction with that. It'll be patch 1 or 2. Well, if I had to guess, I would say it would probably be patch 2 or 3, depending on how many bugs they have to fix and that kind of a thing. So we'll see what happens there. They're very excited to have the chance for a final look through all of Update 42 from their players. We would love feedback from every player that has time to come and check it out. They expect to have a much more polished and finished feeling experience in the third preview than the second. Hope you can help them put the final touches on the new expansion. We should get release notes this week for that. Bonus days. Yeah, that was the news. Bonus days. 30% guild renown now through April 28th. The sales you can honor your guild. 25% off of Astral Shards, Guild Renown Elixirs, 50% off of Guild Charters and Airship Beacons through May 2nd. The weekly coupon code will also get you a lasting potion of Resist Sonic plus 20 times 5 with the coupon code Sonic Resist. I can read, I swear. I can still do that. It's just not apparently not a very good day for me for reading. Jeez. So there you go. The community news. So we'll move into that with the 330th Chronicle. Don't forget to check out the 2019 Summer Munchkin Games schedule on Kyber. They did delay a couple of weeks, I believe, so they'll be starting a little bit later than they were planning on starting, but it'll still be coming this summer. They've been doing that for several years. In fact, I don't even know if I remember how long they have been doing it, but it's been long before. It used to be the Halfling Summer Games, back when it was when there was just halflings in the game. So, other stuff with the community spotlights. Highlanders of Malkir hosted a Thunderpeak and Deathworm teaching raids on yesterday on Sarlona. Again, you can check out the Sarlona forums. You can see when they're doing their teaching raids, or at least what they are doing. They're doing on Saturday. They do also live stream them, and Voodu posts them, so you can check them out and see what kind of fun stuff they're doing there. Let's see other things. The comment for the week: why were Warforged peacocks created? I mean, the better question would be, why weren't other Warforged creatures created? I mean, I can think of many better ones to think of peacock. I mean, come on, where's the Warforged gorilla? That would be a very effective machine, I would think. The guild for the week. This is from Planky, the guild leader of Heroes of Light and Darkness, a level 167 guild on Arganessen. They are no pressure, drama-free, fun-friendly guild. Everyone in Hold helps out each other whenever you're looking for fast XP, acquiring new gear, wanting to raid, or stuck in a quest. It doesn't matter what your playstyle is, if you're level 1 or level 30, a new player or seasoned player. As long as you're willing to have fun and Hold, they will embrace you. So you can check out their forum post there. Fansite news. The DDO Players News had episode 219. DDO Wiki Talk had another episode with Technical 13. FreeDO with Psycho Blonde had an episode. We got a shout out for episode 555 for DDOCast. We were talking about Reaper, again, first part of our discussion on Reaper status and where it is today. And again, we'll continue that discussion later. Let's see. Hibernium had another episode. BioBreak, Sip's blog, talked about being buried alive in Dungeons & Dragons Online. That was more Necropolis, including Tomb of the Tormented, which he was not so much a fan of that one, but there you go. The Brock and Friends had another episode. Gingerspyce also had a video on Reaper Life 3. They got 10,000 Reaper XP in under an hour in Heroics. They're much more efficient than I am. Well done, folks. You can also watch Hero of Canton Solo Adventure with DDOPL, Fridays on Ice with Bachelor, Bard Life with Doug Landauer, and DDO Sunday with Alex and Lynn. Lots of folks streaming DDO of late. It's really fun to see. See, the other thing for the week, there is a new coupon code for a house theme cloaked. The coupon code this week is Epic Greenwood. And don't forget, those will expire December 31st, 2019. So you have a long time to use them, so you can still continue to let them all come out. Other stuff this week, BioBreak had another blog, DDO's World of Mini Permadeath. Basically what it was is he was taking a look at how DDO has kind of a different mechanics kind of base to it, in that you have a limited resource of hit points and spell points. They don't just naturally regenerate as you're playing for the most part. And kind of how that is both a cool thing and a bit of a pain at times. But if you want to check that out, you can look at his blog there. D&D night on DDO stream had tonight was the Wizard's Book. Shortly before I started recording, they finished that up. I think that's the end of that one. But don't forget to tune into D&D night on DDO stream every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. That's sponsored by Fantasy Grounds, which is this really cool virtual tabletop platform. So we play D&D on that. We've got a lot of fun stuff coming up. I think Heroes of Battle Rise is coming back. It was kind of the inaugural series. D&D Cosplat's still going. A lot of fun. So you can see a lot of people play different campaigns. We make sure we have something every week, but kind of the groups kind of rotate in and out and week by week. Let's see. DDOCast is officially on season hiatus, so we'll be back for season 5 in a couple of months. Other DDOCast news, I will be taking a little bit of a break to deal with some stuff in my own life. There will still be shows. Jerry Cordovin is going to be hosting, as well as the Damsels in the coming weeks. So DDOCast will be coming out. You just won't see or hear from me for a couple of weeks, just because of some stuff going on in my own life. I want to let folks know about that. Let's talk about Lightning Post. A couple people wrote in regarding our Reaper, part 1 of our Reaper discussion. Mark said that this was the best DDOCast episode ever. High praise indeed. The most important part is getting new players, perhaps a new player server, and more promotional codes to send to friends for recruitment. Hate to say this, but SSG didn't even have a booth at PAX or Gen Con. That's where you draft new players. Nowadays with past lives, the low-level stuff is a joke. What may be good is if the new Caves of Chaos content is extremely tough low-level stuff. Tough low-level is missing in-game. I'm not sure if Caves of Chaos is if that's meant to be Keep on the Borderlands stuff. I'm not so familiar with that. As far as new players, yes, new players are important. I don't think a new player server is going to do anything because I don't think that fixes the problem. If you just put them all on the same server, that doesn't buoy up the rest of the population very well. Also, technically, we have a new player server. They do I think they rotate it around. I'm not even sure what it is currently. But they do actually rotate around what the, quote, new player server is. It's more of a default server, really. But they have done that for a number of years. I don't know how much it's really impacted things in the long run, but they do have that. I like the idea of promotional codes to send to friends. That's a great idea. I've always... the guest passes are a pretty decent way of doing it, but there's room for improvement there. SSG hasn't had a booth at PAX or Gen Con. Turbine even hasn't had a booth there to promote DDO or even Lotro for a number of years. I think a lot of that has to do with the idea that they're not showing new stuff. It's not a new game anymore. DDO is 13 years old. I think Lotro is 10 or 11 years old, something like that. So these are not new games anymore. But I do agree, yeah, new players, an influx of new players would be really nice. I have no idea how to get them. So I got nothing there. It's tough. There's a very large number of games out there for people to potentially play. How you get them in to be a part of a DDO and join this new game that has been around for this long, it's tough. And it's even tougher when you consider that they're going to go play in a pool with a bunch of people that are way far and ahead of them to the point that they'll never have any hope of ever catching up. So unless they quit their job and, just play DDO 24/7. But yeah, it's important for sure. Amersian wrote in, said, Arkat says that you need to have or probably should have a heavy investment in past lives to run in Reaper and not bog down the other people you're playing with. He could not disagree more. I'm in 2 static groups at this time, neither with anything even resembling a hardcore player, and both groups are handling R2 just fine. There is some learning curve with regards to the adjustment to self-heals being nerfed and healing others even on non-healing classes at the levels where that ability opens up. But after that initial exposure to Reaper is incorporated into the gameplay, Reaper at low skulls is not much of a challenge to a group of casual players. Solo is a different story. Yes, solo is a much different story. It usually always is. Yeah, I think there might be a disconnect here. I'm not entirely sure. Arkat would have to answer it for himself. But I think what Arkat is kind of speaking of is if you don't want to have that sense of you're slowing the group down or you're not really keeping up or participating in a group, you need to have more of an investment as opposed to being able to actually run Reaper. And I think that's an important perspective to have because there's a lot of players, especially when we're talking about we want to get new players in. How do we give them an experience running with experienced players like myself or others people we have on the show and some of them you hear from in a little bit? How do we give them an experience where they don't feel like they aren't contributing and aren't being a part of the group and they're not just being drugged by their coattails through Reaper content as we cruise through it? I mean, I think that just kind of comes back to the players. Do you need to have a heavy investment to run in Reaper? No, I agree. You don't need that. But depending on who you're running with, you may feel like you need to have one, less to survive in Reaper and more to just be part of the group, which is a big part of D&D and DDO, is to have that group experience, which I think is important, especially when you're talking about wanting new players. So I think that might be where that might have been more where Arkat was kind of coming from that perspective. Again, I'm not entirely sure. I haven't talked to him about it, or and I haven't like gone back to listen to that section of the show. But so I think there's a there may be a both and perspective there. It'll be kind of interesting. But all right, that's going to close out the news portion of the show. Stay tuned for, if you're listening to this live, we already recorded the next section, but we will have Reaper Status Update Part 2 as part of the total package for the show coming up here in a minute. So thanks to all the guys that joined me for that, Arkat and Nimvind and Voodu, or Gingerspyce. It was great to have them on the show last week, and we had a lot of fun recording that. Thanks to everyone for listening to the show. And thanks to all the contributors for DDOCast, especially those who are going to be covering for me in the next couple weeks. Also, thanks to Standing Stone Games for supporting the show, and for Wizards of the Coast for making DDO happen, and to Cyberbears for hosting the podcast, and Fantasy Grounds for sponsoring D&D Night on DDO Stream. We really appreciate that from them. If you'd like to support the show, you can go to our website, DDOCast.com. You can view the kobolds there, or you can also support us on Patreon. We do have a Patreon page. All that money goes back into kind of supporting the show and making sure everything's paid for, and mostly supporting prizes, which is why I haven't done prizes in a while. There's not a really big bank there to do any prizes from. So if you'd like to see some of that stuff, that's how you can help make that happen. If you have a DDO-themed webpage, or you Twitch DDO, and you'd like to be featured on our website, email us, ddocast@gmail.com. We'd love to get you featured, or even give you a shout-out on the show, perhaps. You can also hit us up at ddocast.com for show notes, MP3s, our calendar, previous shows, and other fun stuff. If you'd like to be a part of the show, if you have a comment on this episode, or a question you'd like to hear us answer, or a topic you'd like to hear us discuss, or you just want to say hi, leave a comment or email us at ddocast@gmail.com. I have a feeling there'll probably be a few more people chiming in as we really kind of dive into more about where Reaper is and stuff like that. So stay tuned for part 2 of our Reaper discussion. Welcome back to our discussion on Reaper mode, and where it currently is in the game. This is going to be part 2 of heaven only knows how many. We're already saying that we may not get through our whole list here this week, and that's okay, because we think this is a lot of fun to discuss and kind of get into. Let's see, I'm your host, Patrick. With me this week, we have Nimvind, Voodu, and Arkat.
Hey, everyone.
Hello.
Voodu, you might need to cycle your camera there because it's having trouble connecting. So last time we were talking about Reaper mode. We're going to continue that discussion, and it's been a lot of fun so far. We'll hopefully find a place to naturally cut this a little earlier than the last time. Right. So last time we were talking about kind of the design goals of Reaper. Is it achieving that? So stuff, and we kind of started to. We spent a lot of time talking about like new player experience and kind of how that goes. What I want to kind of focus on right now is, and try to discuss towards, is the challenge level. So a couple things, and I'll throw a couple things out here, and we can kind of go round and round in circles and see where this takes us. But one is Reaper mode challenging enough? And 2, is R1 easier than Elite?
Yes.
R1 is easier than Elite?
For me. Let's just
That's
make
a
that
good
clear. For
That's a
me,
good answer.
yes.
That's a good answer.
Mm-hmm.
I have a little somewhat different take. Since my characters, none of them have more than 9 or so Reaper points. Elite, quite frankly, is easier for me because I can self heal
Yeah.
on Elite much better than I can on Reaper. So for me, Elite is still easier.
See, when I hear stuff like that, I hear I don't gear for heal lamp because on
Oh, I do.
R1, on
Dude,
R1, I heal myself for 300 on a heal scroll.
Yeah, but my most of my tunes are all of them are over 100 healing amp. Several are over 200 healing amp. So
But what level range? Because like that's
they're all
great
30.
for, yeah, that's not so great at 30. You're hitting at 180 heal lamp at level 15 and higher if you're gearing for heal lamp, and at level 30, a lot of people that I used to play with at 30 says you need to hit 230 and higher.
I am definitely not hitting that on most of my characters.
Neither am I. I'm gonna go with my generally speaking answer again, and that is Reaper mode challenging enough? Generally speaking, yes. There's a lot of points there that we can parse out. The next part of the question is R1 easier than Elite? By definition, it is not. However, and this is the important part to understand because it is very fashionable for a lot of people to say R1 is easier than Elite without understanding there's a very, very important qualifier to that statement. And that is once you get enough Reaper points, the amount of power that you gain from those Reaper points exceeds the increase in difficulty from going from Elite to R1. Therefore, it becomes easier, but only once you've exceeded that threshold. And so I've had discussions with people about like where is that threshold. Some people have tried to say around 10 Reaper points. I feel that it's closer to about 25 Reaper points when it literally becomes easier. Not about the same, I mean literally easier. R1 literally easier than Elite. I think it's at about 25 Reaper points. And so if that's the case, then it necessarily begs the question, well, when is R2 easier than Elite? Is it when you have 50 Reaper points? When is R3 easier than Elite? Is it when you have 75 Reaper points? And so on. So it's a very, very important qualifier to remember that when we're talking about is R1 easier than Elite, yes, if you have a stack of Reaper points it is, but if you don't, it's definitely not. And as far as Arkat goes, I feel like he's right there at like sort of an R1 level. I have come up with this like informal formula for like what difficulty, how many skulls should you be doing? And I have said then your total number of Reaper points divided by 10. Okay, so if you have 9 Reaper points, that's 0.9. You should be doing 0.9 skulls. So yeah, you're right there at about 1 skull. And so you're going to have a very different experience. And once you get about 15 Reaper points, we have found that you really turn a corner once you start a new life. And I know you don't like the TR, but just speaking in general, once you start a new life and you're starting that life with about 15 Reaper points, you really start to turn a corner in your experience in Reaper mode and survivability and so on. So I just want to really emphasize that qualifier that it's only easier once you have a certain threshold of Reaper points.
Of course, and that makes sense. And when I raid with lava divers or elite raiders, in either one, and this is true for both groups. The folks that are generally saying that R1 is easier than Elite, we might as well do R1 instead of Elite because it's easier. Those are the people that have
Wings.
the wings.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And and it seems like they're not because there are times when I'm thinking to myself, man, I just wish we would do it on Elite. I wish we'd just do it on Elite. But then the guys or the gals with the wings are saying, no, let's do Reaper because it's easier. And and it's like I'm a fairly new member to Lava Divers. I don't. I keep my mouth shut, and I don't really like to, start a lot of drama and that sort of thing. So I just go along with it. But there are times when I just cringe and think to myself, oh, come on, really? Do we really have to, what about those of us that don't have wings? I mean,
Sure.
maybe it's easier for you guys, but it's not for us.
I
Kind of
feel
thing.
I feel like an end game, um, it definitely gets a little bit wider of elite and R1. Like for instance, if you have 15 points and you're level 4, R1 might be a little bit easier, like definitely a lot more easier than elite. But when you're
Sure.
doing like an R1 killing time, then the people with 40 and up Reaper points might enjoy R1. But really, the people who don't really get multiple 100 hit points and multiple melee power, spell pen, and all that from their, they it's really at that point you might as well do elite. Um, so for this for it's really hard to talk about this for me because I experience majority of my high school experiences is beginning of the game, heroic levels, and then like nothing in epics, and then like a lot in legendary questing but not raiding. So like this is actually really kind of informative for everyone in here to hear the opposition too, because honestly, I don't think R1 rating is smart.
I like R1 rating. Like I think it's the way I kind of look at it is the difference between elite and R1 in at least in our guild, right? I think elite there's a fun factor that R1 has that elite doesn't for me. And part of that is because, and we haven't really talked about group dynamics in Reaper very much, but the idea that like self-healing really is hampered. I think that's a big difference for me when we're talking about like running a raid on elite versus Reaper. I think it's more fun. I'm totally on board and fine with this idea that if you can run a raid on elite, you should really give, I think, a hard look, assuming that you're at a place of like where our guild is, where you have a lot of people who have a lot of Reaper points. You should really take a serious look. Can you do this raid on R1? That's kind of where I'm at, and I think now. Having said that, we have a propensity to run raids on R1 that we should be running on L hard with our current like roster of people who have shown up and what characters they're on and stuff like that. So, and I think that that skews. I know that excuse my experience. Arkat, it might. I'm guessing it probably also kind of may skew that experience you're talking about there too.
Absolutely.
So that's something
Absolutely.
to
The
keep in
raid
mind.
leaders tend to overestimate.
Yeah.
I mean, they've done it. They've done it in the past. The R1. There's no
Yeah.
reason why we can't do R1 now. Well, maybe look at the roster. Maybe look at who's
Yeah.
on. Maybe look at the tunes that we have. Be a little more realistic about expectations.
But a couple things that I want to kind of jump in on that people have said. One, I think what Nimvind was saying, like the level range you're running at, I think has a big factor here, right?
Oh, sure.
Oh yeah, because like at level 4 you get all tier 1 in your first core, which kind of like the why you level up, you realize that it doesn't give you the full, like I'll have 94 Reaper points, but at level 4 I'm just as strong as someone with like 36. Like it's an even playing ground at certain levels.
But once you get like you're talking about level 4, right? Like if you're getting another 400 hit points from Reaper points at level 4, that's like quadrupling your hit point. That's a big
no
deal.
kidding.
Of course,
Yeah.
R1's going to be easier here, right? We start talking about getting
Exactly.
up to the higher levels and 30, an extra 400 hit points. That's, maybe that's not maybe a 50% increase in your hit points, right? So there's a big variance there. And I think that when people talk about like the Reaper points making it easier, I think the biggest thing about the Reaper trees is hit points in this regard, right? Because more hit points means you can get hit more times.
Yeah, and you get like a little oomph. You get a little spell pen, a little spell power, a little melee power, a little range power, a
You
little rock
do,
and
but
roll,
it's
more
not like
dodge.
a lot of that stuff isn't a huge thing. Like you get more DCs, but that sort of compensates for the monsters having higher saves and stuff like that. But the hit points is really, I think, what really leverages the power, and we'll talk about the trees in more detail later. But I think that the other thing the thing that I feel like people are always kind of glossing over is R1 easier than Elite is are you in a party? Like, what's your party look like? If you're a party of one and you're playing a character that doesn't have, maybe a fighter or a monk or a rogue, right? Characters that don't have access to, particularly at lower levels, self-healing, particularly in combat self-healing. Like, there's a big difference there from a class or a character that does. Or like, does your, and again, if it's one person versus running with 6 people, there's a big difference there, I think, too.
Okay, so like there's times where it's just me and Voodoo. Sometimes there's just me. I have a video of me doing like I think R3 or R4 Wizard of the Wine by myself on a barbarian fighter, self-healing just fine. Uh it's really situational. So sometimes there's like 3 of us and 4 of us. Sometimes there's 6 of us. But this is just heroically speaking, right? So for when it gets to legendary and legendary raids, I definitely do think that you need uh, either attentive co-workers or a dedicated healer, because if no one's making it through the first group of mobs, then there's no completion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a dedicated healer in Reaper mode is obviously very, very nice. I mean, luckily with Lava Divers, there's 1 or 2 folks that are usually play healers, and they're very good. So we're very, very lucky, and I don't grimace so much when they're in the group, because I know that we'll get decent healing. So I mean, they're not perfect, but nobody's perfect. So but if you're in a group that there's no real experienced or really good healer, then it's just I feel dread, doom, despair just right there on weighing on me.
There's definitely times we go on a cut, or even just like a pug, right? Like join a pug, like, okay, this group, let's get in there, like 3 minutes in the quest, like, oh, this is gonna hurt. This was a bad idea. Where's the eject button? Is there a way to abort in a way that's within the confines of acceptable behavior, mutually acceptable behavior?
I the one thing that I noticed when I was doing a lot of legendary R10s, or like I usually did R7s to R10s when I was running with Fire Goddess and them and legendary. It was a good almost a whole year. Uh, just as important as a dedicated healer is a dedicated tank, someone that
Mm-hmm.
because it's really nice for a healer in Reaper mode to only have to heal one person. One person grabs all the aggro. Everyone's ranging and DC casting from like the beginning of the quest, while the tank is at the end of the quest, and the healer's somewhere in the middle trying to heal them both, and it's just smooth, right? Because end game, tanking is the best CC, hands down. Charms due to Epic Ward are halved, and then holds are great and all, but nothing beats when all the mobs are only affecting one player and all the spell points of the caster only has to go towards that one person. So tanks super important, dedicated healer or attentive people that can semi heal, um, which is actually harder to find than a dedicated healer, to be
Yeah,
honest.
I
and
agree.
and, and DPS and DC casting. I feel like that would be a really good party for any high school Reaper.
So I think, because we're kind of going a little bit beyond or away from this question of is R1 easier than Elite, I think the consensus here is at a certain point, yes, based on factors like how many points do you have, or are you in a group, what's your party makeup look like? Seems to be kind of the general consensus there. Let's kind of continue talk about the challenge of Reaper. How do you guys feel about how challenging the different skull ranges are? Do you think that we're in a good place there? Do you think that there needs to be more challenge, less challenge? What's kind of your sense in that regards?
I think the range is fine, but I mentioned in last show, I think it's uneven. So an
Sure.
R5 in one quest is harder than an R5 in another quest. So the actual degree, and it's probably dependent on the original dungeon to begin with. So some
Absolutely.
elite dungeons are harder than other elite dungeons. But so, but that's not that's really not a reflection on the 1 through 10 skull system. It was more of a, if it's uneven, it's because the elite version was 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 not gauged properly. So I think our degrees are the number of skulls and how challenging each can be is probably about right.
I'll even take it a one little step further than we were talking about, like the balance for a quest on elite. There's some quests that are just harder and longer, and variety is good, but we start talking about amplifying difficulty, right? If you're talking about amplifying a quest that's going to take you generally 10 minutes versus amplifying it by, and increase the time by 20% versus a quest that normally takes you 30 minutes and amplify the time by 20%. Like there's a big difference there. So it's not even just the existing normal hard elite difficulty system balance. I think there's something to be said about the difference in quest design and length of quests and stuff. So
Yeah, I like to think of the skull rating system as frosting and quest as cake. Some cake is tougher than other cakes, like fruit cake.
Ooh.
And then so you get a tough cake and you add 3 layers of frosting on it. And you get an easy, nice sponge cake, and you add this. So, like, really, you're just adding the same 3 layers on 2 different cakes, but one cake is going to be way more pleasant than the other. So, like, I feel like it really depends on the base quest, on the difficulty that it takes that frosting, because you're just adding onto it, right? But the skulls are the same difficulty from each other. It's the quests that are different. You know what I mean? Like, if you're going against a Droam Nation ogre or a giant toad from the Chaos Realm, whatever those things are called, you're gonna slots 2 different. Like, you can do them both on R2. The slot will mess you up. It's just the dungeon. It's just the quest. It's the mobs. Plus 2 more skulls. Uh, same. The skulls are the same difficulty. It's the quest that's different.
I'm not gonna speak in cake metaphors, so hopefully y'all can still follow what I'm saying. I want to, admit that when I'm working through like my heroic lives, that we're cherry picking the quests, and I'm always looking for those easier quests. Like, like we're talking about, some of the older content is just easier. Like one of my favorites to do is Sorrow Dusk. Those mobs are just way easier than you know than newer
Devil's Brow.
content. Right. I mean, you can
Yeah.
blitz through every part of Sorrow Dusk in 5 or so minutes, and definitely cherry picking those quests, and also knowing which quests are more difficult than others, so that if we do happen to, we need to do a certain quest to flag, knowing that it's harder, we might step it down. And a good example of that is like Ghosts of Perdition. Like that, we know from experience that boss in Reaper mode is a nightmare because he just looks at you and drains all your cons. So when we get to that one where we did, flesh makers on R7, we go over to Ghost of Perdition. It's just okay, R4. We just want to get it done. We're gonna do it on R4, and then we go over to Vol and do that one on R6.
Offering
So
of Blood's another low skull one.
exactly, Offering of Blood R4, because that constant respawns,
Too
constant
many mobs. Yeah.
debuffing, like just R4 for that one. Whereas when we're doing the rest of Sand Walk Ups, we're doing R5, R6, R7.
Yeah, the Mines of Tethymar quests are like that too.
Some of them are some of those ones are really easy, and some of them are a little harder. And it depends on what you have in your group too, right?
It also depends on what they have on their group, because champions and reapers are always. Strike back is one of my favorite ones because it can be done in 9 minutes or it can be done in 15 minutes, depending on the dungeon.
I did this live for the life before. I was running at level 2. Info is key on R1. And I got to the end fight and had 2 Reapers spawn in the same fight. Did not go well for me. Yeah, I think there's a lot of variable there, right? Like there's this idea of what do you have in your party, because some of those quests, the mob selection, right? Like I know is it grave shift, grave work, the one with
The one with the door.
the Mines of Tethumar, the one with the golems.
Oh, graveyard shift.
Yeah. Like that quest, there's a marked difference in that quest if you have someone who can instant kill undead versus not, right? Because there's a different mob selection there. So I think there's some fun kind of games to be had in that regards. But I think there's definitely, like, the funny thing is we're talking about like cherry picking quests, right? We totally do that with Reaper mode, but I would say that's not necessarily a function of Reaper mode. I think it's more a function of us, because when Reaper mode didn't exist, it's not like we didn't cherry pick quests to run for XP, right? Like, who people don't run Proofs in the Poison for XP.
No.
At level 4, right? Like, we already cherry picked the quest. That's not any different. So I think that's just kind of an observation there. The thing that I take away with the Reaper challenge, and I think it's actually in a pretty good place. And there's 2 reasons why I think that. Because one is, when people are completing quests on R10, like, are they really completing quests on R10? Because, like, we've talked a little bit about the charming thing, right? Like, is charming mobs really completing? Like, it seems like most of the time that we're completing stuff on R10, we're kind of like skirting the bounds of like what's the intended behavior of how the quest is supposed to function and stuff like that. And how
There's a lot of cheese in high skull play. There's
a lot of cheese. That's a great way of putting it. There's a lot of cheese in high school play. That's not to say that people don't complete R10. And in a more and it's, I would say that tactics is not necessarily cheesy, but you know, the charming, excessive charming, and stuff like that. There's some cheese stuff there.
This guy down here, this Gingerspyce I'm pointing to, he tanks LOD legit on R10.
Nice. Which LOD are we talking about?
Lords of
Dust.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah, like going like base normal level R10 on my little, not true tanks, like Voodu and Gingerspyce, going toe to toe with that guy on R10, and that, he's a pretty hard hitting boss. That's the hardest one in the game, but that's a lot of fun. And
he was when he came out.
Yeah.
This is one of the things that I really try to show on my YouTube channel is we don't do a lot of cheese. I'm not going to say we never cheese. Not try to play that, but in when we're live streaming in the videos, we use, even when we're not live streaming into a video, like, we use very, very little cheese. But we want to show, like, in our live streams and videos, like, you can do these quests without cheesing and without a bunch of power builds,
which is great because I'm lactose intolerant.
And that's the other thing I wanted to say too, is one of the reasons why I think the challenge is in a pretty good place is I actually like that. I kind of actually like where R1 is, in the sense that the jump between, like, if you don't have any Reaper points or any of the stuff that we kind of talked about, making R1 easier than Elite, going from Elite to R1 as a new player party, that's accessible, and I think that's great. Like, if people want to, I don't think people should be afraid of going from Elite to R1. And I don't think that there's necessarily a reason to be. I think that we've got a system where you can do that fairly easily and have success and have fun in it.
Yeah, I think looking at the LFMs is also a telltale, speaking to this, about, is the difficulty at a good place? You still have, I think, probably the majority of the community at large, they're still doing R1s at Elite Streak level. Like, if this was just so easy, why aren't they bumping it down to normal level? Why aren't they bumping up the skulls if it's just so easy?
Yeah,
so
I agree with that.
The fact that you don't see a lot of high skull posts, and a lot of people that are doing high skull stuff Like they're just doing it in their tight little circles. They're not, pugging out R8s and 10s. Some people are.
No.
I give them props for that. That's cool. If you post an R8, R10, and you take anybody, I think that's awesome. Like to me, that really speaks to your quality as a player. Knowing like I'm gonna take one or two people I don't even know, and we're still gonna get this done. Like that's awesome. But a lot of these high skull groups, they're just tight little circles, and that's all they do is group with each other.
Yeah, I think it's true, and I don't know. I really like where that people can come and challenge themselves in higher skulls, and there's a nice variability there. And when you start talking about R10s, I think there's probably more cheese completions than like we're actually completing this stuff on R10 in a way that's more legit, as it were. But
Well, I feel like it gets cheesier the more you go away from a dynamic. Like I noticed that I'm not gonna say names, but I noticed that when we lack either a tank or a healer, we be on some perches like some birds up on trees and just going
sure, yeah,
just throwing as much as we can at the whatever we have to deal with. Um, and like Severlin mentioned that charming is not working as intended in Reaper mode, but they just didn't fix it because like whatever. And so I'm a charmer. I love, I go up to a Reaper. I'm like, hey, going my way.
Who are you perching with? Because it's not in my groups. I want to make that very clear. We don't do that stuff in my groups.
It's Voodoo
I'm,
Spice's evil
I want to make
twin.
sure that you are painting an accurate picture, and that I am distancing myself from that
No,
kind of play.
I'm speaking about legendary R10s. You're not doing those. So
No, not
yeah,
typically.
it's not with Voodoo
It's
Spice.
not with
It's
me.
with
That's right.
but when I am in a Pug R10 Legendary Quest group, it really does depend on the tank healer dynamic, where how much we end up cheesing. And of course, there's always someone that's willing to spend half of their SP par charming a Reaper at the end fight, because Epic Ward cuts. Like that's my thing, is that like for me, I don't really dig charming when we get into epics because of the epic ward cuts down the time, and then the skulls cut down the time even further in charm. So your charm really just like you're spending all your spell points keeping that up. So it's really hard to keep that cheese going in end game, but it's possible.
I think that something that I'm hearing too. We were talking about is Reaper mode achieving its design goals last time. Is Reaper mode challenging enough here? There's, I think, a sense in a lot of players too of, hey, let's run Reaper and kind of challenge it a little bit, and let's make sure we have a good balanced party to do it, right? Like I think that is definitely an idea of it's encouraging, a really positive team-oriented play style, which I think is really great. So I think in those terms, it's probably being fairly successful. Here's what we do. We're gonna wrap this one up, and we'll keep going and do some more discussion and kind of come back to some stuff. There's a couple things in the chat I want to bring in here that I think will be fun to talk about next time. But for now, thanks for listening to DDOCast. Thanks to my guests Nimvind, Voodu, and Arkat. Don't forget to check out the High Lords of Malkir's posts regarding their teaching rates that are still going on this spring. I think is it going till what, maybe like through May, probably into June?
Into June, definitely.
Okay, cool. And check out their YouTube pages. Nimvind and Voodu both have YouTube pages with some stuff there, and you can check out the teaching raids. And even if you didn't make it to the actual raid itself, you can kind of check that out and see what it looks like to run these raids and get an idea of that. If you'd like to support the show, you can visit our website, DDOCast.com, or you can support us on Patreon. You can also find show notes, past shows, or more on our website. You can also find us on social media and follow us for the latest cast updates at DDOCast on Twitter. If you'd like to join the discussion, leave a comment. You can email us at ddocast@gmail.com. I have a feeling the comments in this is going to be a lot of fun. So until next time, may all your attack rolls be crits, all your chests level appropriate, have fun, and don't forget to gather for buffs.